Alright, we're recording for chapter 3 of... Nope, that way. Star Trek, the motion picture novelization. Actually didn't start highlighting things for a bit. I have to go by my notes here. So, Kirk has now traveled to Gibraltar because that's where there's a communication station for him to communicate with Starfleet Command in San Francisco. Excuse me. In order to verify what the Sunceiver sent him. Which I did put in my notes. It should have been the Sunceiver just going, hey, you need to contact us, and then he goes there. But, in any case. He also wants to do that to check for why... Like, did he miss it in the message? It's saying that, hey, you gotta come back to headquarters. Because, as I put in my notes, because this is what he thinks about in there, because it's just mental stuff at this point. Surely they would want the benefit of his deep space experience, and he has duties for fleet deployments. He's an admiral, after all. But it is also just, I did make the note of, you're an admiral. You think you need to be told to come back for something like this? You're an admiral. You can just show up. Yeah. But there was some more stuff that goes on with the Admiral stuff. I want to focus on Gibraltar for a little bit longer. Because what it describes, in some ways, I like the concept. But I still say it's stupid. And it's very much one of those, I'm technical a bit too much. So while he is outside of the communication area, he's at Gibraltar, and he is, taking in the site there, which includes there being essentially a massive hydroelectric dam that's apparently been there for a couple centuries. Describes it powering southern Europe and North Africa. Which, I don't know why you'd say southern Europe. I would think Western Europe. Because, Greece is southern Europe. Why would you be running the power that far as opposed to, lighting up the whole of France and Germany and such? I mean, anyway. But it's not just that. Oh, it does mention some blocks there for ships. But it still is. I'm saying I got problems with the idea that you would shut down such a major seaway. But it's not even just that. They also partially drained the Mediterranean. Now, I understand the reason given, but I reject it. Amusingly, I kind of also did the same thing in one of the stories, in one of my stories. So they lowered the level so that various ruins would become accessible now. So, for example, the Library of Alexandria, where that is actually now underwater. It also mentions Minoan ruins, which, if I'm remembering correctly, the Minoan society is what some believe the stories of Atlantis were inspired by. There's other theories because of certain other things that have been found that it's... Don't need to go into those theories. They are kind of interesting. I think that they're not totally unreasonable. If you make one assumption, I'll just say it because I've been saying too much. Just because some of the conspiracy theory stuff with it, it's some of it is a bit more than I think makes sense. But that there were, in fact, advanced civilizations during the Ice Age, essentially, or at least near that time, which would be well earlier than any other we know. But it's that doesn't really bother me because it's I could believe that you just had a group of people that figured out how to become agrarian while everyone else was still hunter-gatherer, something like that, and they were just successful and it built up, but then they failed ultimately. Maybe they didn't know how to properly maintain the land long enough, so it collapsed, and then they dispersed. Hunter-gatherer continued on, and then eventually from there the hunter-gatherers became agrarian. That did succeed, and so those are the records we know. While the other, it's no, at most it was just the ruins because those civilizations fell apart. I got no problem with something like that. Because I have heard that for another explanation for what Atlantis might be. But anyway. So you lower the sea level, so now you get access to this. It's I'm okay with the concept of some amount of terraforming, but this is stupid. Because the Mediterranean Sea is freaking huge. Okay? I mean, it's... Where are you putting that much water? Right? Because it has to go somewhere. It is of use, because sea trade... It may sound silly, But I would think that in Star Trek you would still have, even at that point of technology, you would still have ships. Why not? Naval ships. Why not? I mean, they would probably be using less energy than transporters and less energy than shuttlecraft that can fly. I mean, yeah, I mean, think about it today. We have airplanes. They can be very efficient, but we're still using super tankers and such because they're even more efficient. So why would you give that up? I mean, the only transportation method I can think of that has been diminished and supplanted by newer technologies is trains, at least in the United States. But that, I would say, is more so because we are just so heavily a car culture, which I have a hard time saying because of my speech impediment, that the idea of using trains for people to move around it isn't that strong. Once we had the ability, like once the highway system was developed enough that you can drive from one side of the country to the other, reasonably. It won't be as comfortable as on a train, but I mean, it's like that. I think is part of the reason why. And then as far as freight trains go, it's like, yeah, those are awesome, but the things aren't being maintained as well because you're not seeing it, and it's just more convenient in some cases for trucks. Don't get me wrong. I think fully the train system, that's critical infrastructure. It should be addressed. It is in a very bad situation at the moment, as various places like East Palestine have shown. It's like we need to improve that, and we should probably turn to it more. It is far more efficient than trucks. Even electric trucks would not be as efficient. I mean, what is it? The which, by the way, also diesel. Some of the train engines are actually hybrids and have been for decades. Diesel electric hybrids, very, very efficient. And they can move goods like you can't believe. I mean, like mile-long trains with very, very little fuel. They are so incredibly efficient. It's amazing. It was like, yeah, you could do that and move this stuff, but then you for the long haul stuff, and then you use trucks to move it around from there. But instead, it's we're just using the highways and the trucks more largely. So it's like now we have more congestion on the highways, more highway maintenance is necessary because of the added weight. I mean, trains are good. Anyhow, I'll even add this. Sorry, I wanted to come back, but in a letter from Catherine, because I do describe technically two, but only one, they're identical. These massive space stations that I call Lagrange stations, because they're at the Lagrange points. But they are massive spaceports, essentially. And I do actually mention that there are like railways on the outside of them, because you can have some cargo that would need to bring it inside. You would actually just have these robotic trains or manual. I mean, there would be some people managing probably on the outside that would just put the cargo on there and move it around that way. Because why not? Because trains are awesome. Okay, I'm not just saying it because I was once a boy. Yeah, and I mean, little boys love trains, space program, like space rockets, and dinosaurs. Okay, it's like those are the three things that basically that's going to happen for all young boys. It's in my opinion, at least in Western civilizations. Right? I mean, maybe only two of the three. Probably, I would doubt only one of the three, but it's like that's going to happen. Anyhow, I was less so the dinosaurs. My brother was more so dinosaurs. Just anyhow. So yeah, the idea of sacrificing the Mediterranean makes no sense. And there's still some water there, but it's very much lowered. There's also the issue of this would have. I don't even think you could predict the impact that would have on the environment there. It describes that, oh yes, it was then made into a garden that then helped so much. It's like, yeah, but now the Nile's going to behave differently. That's going to screw up Egypt, potentially, at least parts of Egypt. I'm sure that there are various other seas and oceans seas and rivers, I should say, that would also be impacted by this, that sudden lowering of the sea level there. The weather, though, would also be wildly different. I was like, I live in northern Ohio. We got Lake Erie, okay? Which, when you think about it, we shouldn't call the Great Lakes lakes. They're kind of seas, at least by size. I wonder if it's because like lakes will be freshwater, seas like they're the same thing, but lakes are freshwater, seas are saltwater. But anyway, there's a thing called lake effect, and depending on the lake, it can be very different. But I mean, we've got parts around here that in winter, if you get lake effect snow can be like a few miles to the west, a few inches come down. But you cross the line when it's not lake effect, we're now talking a few feet in the same amount of time. I mean, it's like, and Lake Erie is not that big compared to the Mediterranean, and we're just gonna get rid of that. I am sure that would completely change the weather. And Europe's weather is already really sensitive to stuff because I'm trying to remember what it's. Is it just the Mid-Atlantic current? There's actually a current of water that is flowing north through the center of the Atlantic, and this is critical because it is carrying so much heat with it because it's from the equator up. It is warming Europe, so it's actually a funny thing that global warming will cause Europe to freeze. Because if global warming were to cause Greenland and such to melt, that would push this current down, which means that there'd be less heat up there for Europe. Europe is much warmer than it's supposed to be with if you were to just go by sunlight. Like, think about it. Europe aligns with the northern United States and Canada, which can be very cold, but it's quite warm. It's all because of that current. You messing with the Mediterranean? No, I do not believe for a moment that would be smart. And there's also the issue of we can build seawalls. It's like the idea of pushing back the ocean or a sea or a lake and be like, we're going to do something. We already can do that. So, yeah, I get how it is a neat technological achievement to talk about in a science fiction setting. But it's also when I can't help but be technical about it and just go through. And even if I don't know specifically what the weather impacts would be, there is no way I would ever put this into a story without it then being and then we changed our minds because we realized this was a terrible idea. I mean, it's also one thing with the lake is because it's also it stores so much heat, or it takes so much heat out of the air that it screws with our weather as well for that reason. I mean, just it can be down, there can be times when down by the lake it is many degrees warmer than further away, and vice versa, just because it holds so much there. And it's also like when it freezes over, our weather will completely change because now it's just ice over there instead of water impacting that. I mean, it's like you are not messing with the Mediterranean. It's not a good idea. As I said, I'm technical. All right. Also, I doubt that this idea that you'd be able to make it into a garden. It's like, well, I mean, the Sahara actually does go back and forth between desert as it is now and being a lush forest. Wouldn't it make more sense if you can terraform in the area, just terraform that to be a lush area rather than a desert? It would probably also be easier. Anyway, so Kirk, coming back to the story. Kirk, trying to communicate with Starfleet, he has to verify who he is and all that. And it is kind of funny because he walks in, even though he's on vacation, apparently did it say lieutenant? I don't remember. The communication officer there is like, oh my god, it's an admiral. It's like, so apparently he somehow wears his insignia even though he's on vacation? But then it's like, yes, and I'm Admiral Kirk. It's like, oh, you're Kirk. It's like, you were just telling us about how you would kind of, like, because you came back alive and the ship intact. I mean, it's like, how many admirals? I'm sorry, it just seems like one of those things she would know. It's not an admiral. It's Kirk. He's an admiral. Plus, there's also, actually, yeah, that's true. That very much would have to be the case. Because of his position as an admiral, I would assume that Starfleet knows where he is all the time. That it's like his vacation was registered, I would think, such that she being, I mean, that is the nearest communication center for him to use. So that means if something comes up, that's where he's going. She would have to know he's in the area. And also, even though it's like, yes, they're trying to keep things down, you would also think, hey, there's a we had to send out a message to Kirk, to Admiral Kirk, expect him to arrive, and any other admirals in the area, expect them to arrive to verify. That should all be like normal operating procedure. Anyway. So yeah, a lot of secrecy. He has to verify his identity. Call starts, and again he has to verify his identity. And he's just like, yeah, Starfleet is probably trying to keep this all secret. Which, on the one hand, at least it does go on to give the explanation that sort of. I am inferring more from it than perhaps is meant to be there. So Starfleet is trying to control this information. They don't want it getting out, which initially is first blush is a bad idea, depending on how long they're looking for this, because the Klingons know, and this thing is so freaking huge. I could believe that they're just amateurs with sensors out there, like, amateur astronomers with telescopes out there kind of thing, that are already noticing this is there. So, yeah, that... But it does later say they're likely just trying to keep it secret so they can have answers once questions start being asked. That's fair, okay? Because, it's like, one thing that I don't actually recall it ever being taught in high school, because I think it would more so have been then. After Pearl Harbor, all communications with Hawaii were cut off. And this was intentional by the government, because it was shit. We need to control the situation before we let people know. Okay, it's like, it was that bad. Because, like, for one thing, the Navy being so devastated, but just the fact we're now at war in this way, it's like, yeah, no, we control the situation, get information so then we can do that. And also, to be fair, they would not have predicted the internet and such in this book. In fact, it was funny the other day. One thing, it is interesting to think about, to see anyone suggesting how such a thing as the internet may have been, in just science fiction kind of future prediction stuff. I can believe that things like email, YouTube to a degree, like everybody being able to make and share their own movies, stuff like that, absolutely I think they'd predict. Social media, I don't think they would have. The idea that our psychology would so change from having direct communication with people, such as a letter, which email recreates, to being that we can just write short things and put it out there for the world, and then to actually have back and forth engagement. I mean, that I think no one would have predicted would have succeeded, because that's so different from what the communication that we had been capable of previously. And think about it, even an author, the most read author, they had to work on a book that they had to write, and there's not back and forth communication with that. I mean, even someone like Tolkien, it was still letters back and forth. It's not like, oh, somebody wrote a letter and now he's putting it up to, he's then putting that out to publish that. No, he just wrote a letter back. He also kept a lot of the letters, and other people got them, and those have since been compiled, but it's like, even that was still more direct one-to-one. So anyhow, but yeah, it's, I get the idea, but as I said, I might be inferring more that, this is that there's great significance behind what it says, that they're trying to make sure they have answers before the questions start. All right. Also mentions that it does occur to him, this might be a time for me to escape from his flag rank prison. So he is recognizing, and it goes into more stuff with this, actually, and there's some disturbing things as well. Unwholesome things, let's go with that, as to him becoming an admiral. But yeah, so we do get that where he doesn't really appreciate being an admiral anymore. He wants to be a captain. And even mentions here that Bones tried to convince him to refuse the promotion, turn it down, but apparently even invaded staff country at the Admiralty to insist that this was a terrible idea. The use of that quarterdeck breed, whose symbiotic man-vessel relationship had intrigued and puzzled psychiatrists, and before them poets, since the days of sailing vessels. Basically, He's a natural captain. You can't take him out of that. Then it goes on, and this isn't so much the weird stuff that I was mentioning. It's a little later. It's yeah. What Kirk did not realize was that the decision to accept Admiral's stars, that's not correctly capitalized, anyway, had already been made for him by Starfleet's commanding admiral. On bringing the Enterprise back safely from its historic mission, Kirk had become simply too valuable to be allowed to accept another deep space command. I disagree with this. He had not been told that McCoy's arguments had been supported by many medical colleagues who believed that a ground assignment at this juncture might destroy Kirk, or at least his Starfleet career. Starfleet's commanding admiral had to make a difficult choice between what was good for Kirk and what was good for Starfleet, and the organization had won. Incorrect. This was a bad decision, period. I do find it odd, though, that in many other medical colleagues, it's like, you don't need a psychiatry background to understand. It's not a medical decision. It's also just a basic command decision. He's great where he is. You remove him from that, you're losing an asset. You're not protecting him. You're losing him. And also, I mean, if he were instead, hey, Kirk, guess what? You're great. So, we're going to put you at Starfleet for a while. You're going to be teaching. Okay? That makes sense. Because now you're trying to apply that to it. Or even you know what, Kirk? Here's what we want to do with you now. You're great. We're going to give you a new command, or we're just going to change up the Enterprise some. You are now going to be taking out training crews, because we need you passing this down to the next generation. We need you to do that because we want more like you. And it could also be look, we know you love the deep space. Great. Give us 1 year of this. Give us 2 years of this. Let's have 1 or 2 classes go through your training process. You're not going to be going out too far. You're going to be staying kind of in, because we're not giving you the most competent of crews. Understand? I mean, it's like we kind of don't want them going somewhere where suddenly you have to fight a war, or just we don't have somebody that can come and rescue your asses if they screw something up. Okay? I mean, that would make more sense. But this, if nothing else, it does show this was purely a political move, promoting him as they did. But it was also a very bad, it was a bad command decision. Completely bad. Because, as I said, you know his strength is here, and you removed him from that. Protecting him from death means nothing if he's not useful anymore, and he doesn't really seem to be. Okay. Now we get to the, as said, somewhat unwholesome part. So, when he's actually in communication now with Starfleet Command, it is Vice Admiral, which his specific rank hasn't been said, but I would assume a Vice Admiral is relatively high. Like, I think Rear Admiral is below that. And also, it's been mentioned, he's only been an Admiral for a couple years. Okay? So, if we assume that is in fact 2, but a couple moves around a little bit, I would think that means he's a lower ranked Admiral. Certainly below a Vice Admiral. But Lori Ciani? C-I-A-N-I. You figure out how to pronounce it. I'm just going to call her Lori. Kirk does. She's the one that comes on. And we get a heck of a description of her. He's smitten with her, which, well, we'll get to that. But just explaining a little bit more about her position. And by the way, she's part of the commanding admiral, who's Nagoya. He's part of her inner staff. He is also part of this guy's staff, but she is part of the inner staff. She was the xenopsychologist in charge of Starfleet Command's relationships with non-human species, and also Nagoya's personal representative to the new human groups we have on Earth. It's like, shit, we're stuck with that thing. I hate that concept. When it was mentioned in that one preface, I hated it then. I hate it now too. And is this really something? Well, I'm trying to think, is this really something? No, I'm going to say, this is not the position for an admiral. This is not. That is a political position. Like, I mean, the Federation Starfleet is the military portion of the Federation that has a president. That I'm trying to remember when the president is first introduced. Obviously, we have them in Star Trek VI. I want to say it's earlier. I just don't quite remember where. But still is such a xenopsychologist position for how to deal with non-human species. That's something the Federation as a whole would be concerned with. So it would make sense that this is actually a political position from the Federation that Starfleet now has. I could also see there being, for intelligence purposes, a Starfleet officer that would be responsible here, but that's not necessarily an admiral, okay? Or that's head of Starfleet intelligence, which that could be an admiral. But still, that doesn't itself need to be a vice admiral. So not an admiral, certainly not a vice admiral. So yeah, that I just find odd. But it's also, again, I just seriously, the New Human stuff, drop that. It's so stupid. But so as I said, he describes her. Let me go back. It was a perfect transmission signal connecting the Gibraltar station with Starfleet, and Lloyd looked so completely real and radiant that Kirk could suddenly hear his heart pounding as it always did whenever she came near him during the year they had spent together. The year is where it gets weirder. But let me read this other part that it's like, yeah, this is actually written in here. And he could feel the slight pressure of his genitals responding to those memories. She had been perfection, lover, friend, wife, mother, and in every other role and joy she supplied as he slowly recovered from the fatigue and emotional wounds of those 5 long years out there. I hate that description there. The fatigue and emotional wounds. It's like that is his love. That is his passion. That is his true vocation. Okay. He'd work through those things by continuing in them. Anyhow, they had lived the basic and simple 1-year arrangement together, but those months had been memorable ones. That's the thing that I really dislike here. Is that it's like I also put in my notes oh crap, where is it? Yeah, the basic and simple 1-year arrangement. So, and there's even a line later. Yeah, I actually have it here because it's one of the next things that I got highlighted. Jim, okay, so she's telling him stuff, and he can read her, and he knows that she's lying to him, mainly a lie of omission, because even though she's a good liar, if she doesn't believe in the lie, there are tells, and he knows them. So yeah, Jim, there's one starship that might be, I'll explain more of this, positioned in time to pull off an interception. Kirk understood completely, but he kept his expression blank. Then in italics, so this is more so like what he's actually thinking. Your next words could brand you a whore, Lori. Nagoya's staff whore, I hope I'm wrong. And it's like, so apparently she was assigned to him or they were assigned together for a year. That was them living it. I'm sorry. She's kind of already that. So is he. This is. It makes it sound clinical. It literally makes it sound like, hey, we have assigned you a prostitute to help you relax from the sea. It's like, what the hell? What? I don't really want this in Star Trek. I think that this. Well, no, I do consider this. This isn't just. I think it's. I believe it to be degrading. To both of them. I mean, it's like it's actually funny. I pulled it out, but it's in a stack. I recently got myself a copy of Rollerball. I love that movie, the original. And it's like Johnny, right? Yeah, Johnny E, isn't it? I really hope I'm getting the name right. I'm pretty sure it's Johnny. James Caan's character. He had a wife, but somebody higher up decided, oh, I like your wife. I want her. And so he loses his wife, who he continues to love for a while, and they just assign him different women to be, well, essentially, the prostitutes say. I mean, it's like that's what they serve as. That's their purpose. Also, to some degree, like the one who's there for most of the movie is trying to manipulate him for the company's goals. But then when he actually does because they want to really control him, and he's just defying it, they bring his wife back to him, at least for a short period of time, and it's clear she is also the same kind of prostitute. And that's all she is. I'm sorry if you don't like the word. That's what that's what the character is. That she has been that degraded as a person, that degraded as a woman. That's all she really is. And it is such a powerful scene when he fully understands this, that she is only here because the company wants her there in order to try to manipulate him, to just get what they want out of him. She is not there because she loves him. And even though he loves her, it's done, and he knows it's done. He had a video screen, well, he had a videotape of memories from when they were together, and it actually shows like multiple views on it, and he hits the button and you just see it burn away and it's deleted. And it's just such a powerful moment because it is so clearly painful for him. But it still, he pressed that button because he knew it was gone. It was gone already. Let them just be memories, and not the kind that he can play back. Just a memory up here if he must go back to it. But even that doesn't necessarily want to. Everything is burned for him. Like, such a good scene. But it's like, that's... She's a vice admiral, but... And I don't know how quickly you can advance through the ranks of admiral. And this, so it was 1 year when he got back. Based on the previous chapter, it's been 2.8 years since the Enterprise returned. So 1 year of this back, and then it's 2 years, about a couple years that he's been an admiral. So we're talking about that 1 year and then he's promoted. It's reasonable to me. She would have already been an admiral then. Unless it was like she also became an admiral and just got promoted very quickly at the same time. She was a ranking officer. She at least would have been a captain, if not a low ranking admiral, that was assigned to spend a year. Let me check something. This is going to be the easiest way, right? Yeah. Hey, you know, I can also check rollerball this way. Yes. Oh, sorry. Jonathan E. I think there are times that they call him Johnny, though. All right. 79. Damn, I would have kind of hoping it would have been earlier in the 70s. For those wondering, I just I think I've talked about it before. I've got all my movies and all my television shows on a server, and with the Jellyfin app, with Jellyfin on the server, and I can use an app on the phone to pull that up, and I just looking at it there because this would have the same release year as the movie, so 79. But man, this is just so 70s, and it is like, you know, the whole kind of free love stuff, and it's just. I'll admit it, I'm a romantic at heart. So this stuff is painful, and I see it as degrading. And it's just, man. There's also technically the issue of they were both in Starfleet. They're both officers of Starfleet. Now, technically, my understanding is, so long as you're not in the same chain of command, relationships are allowed. But then it's also like he is part of the staff. She's part of the inside. It just is really weird, and it's yeah. I will never write a story that would have a relationship going like this with then either one of them he's the protagonist, so I'm going to see it as she was assigned to him, not they were assigned together, because Kirk is a protagonist. Sorry. If she were the protagonist, then I'd say that no, Kirk was assigned to her. But that's not the case. I think I would always, if I were to write a story that had such a planned clinical relationship, I would make, in this case, her clearly a whore, essentially. I mean, not in a... Like, this is her role, is what I mean. More so that is what she does, so that basically there is no meaning to it for her. I think I would have to do that because it is so degraded a situation. I need at least one of them to actually wear that degradation on there. It's just that's not what we're getting here. Anyway, oh yeah, I got to. So she as she's talking about what, because he's now seen a playback of the actual recordings, instead of just the Senseiver. Um, yeah, our science staff's theory that is missing an apostrophe is that the cloud itself may be a power field generated by something inside at the heart of it. Shit, it was an expression that a very young Jim Kirk had learned from Grandfather Samuel. It seemed to fit this moment exactly. I am sorry. He's in the military. He should know all kinds of swears. Well more than shit. Okay? It's like, this is just one of those things where it's, again, this is dumb. Okay? This is dumb. I get... No, actually, I don't get why you're doing that. I mean, it's like, that can just be his reaction. I get the whole writing a little bit more around it because I don't believe he ever swore in the original series, which makes sense. It's a television show. In fact, I believe he didn't swear in most any of it. Because it was meant for as a television show or then films that kids would go to. But one thing I do need to bring up here. So now that he sees like the true image of the V'ger cloud, not just the Sensiver thing, this perfect holocom image let Kirk's space-experienced eyes appreciate its true size. Its strange, colorful translucence could have contained and hidden 100 planets like Earth, perhaps 1,000. Okay. What was it, 1 billion kilometers across is what it was before? I don't quite remember. I just remember it was about 8 AU. Wasn't it? You know what? Screw it. I'm going to try to go back and find it. Would have been in chapter 1, right? Fortunately, these chapters are not that long. Yeah, 1 billion kilometers in diameter. So, yes. Does state 1 billion kilometers in diameter. Okay. So, and this is just one of those, as I said a lot in the previous video, or 2 ago, science fiction gets scale wrong so often. It's kind of sad even. So he's thinking, oh yeah, like 1,000 planets, 1,000 Earths could fit inside this thing. Okay. The sun, okay, the sun itself, nothing more, just the sun can contain 1.3 million Earths, at least by mass. I was looking at that. Crap, that may have been my mass. Let me check again. I had it on here, didn't I? Yeah, how many times larger is the sun than Earth? Okay, 109 times wider than Earth and contains 99.86% of the total mass of the solar system, meaning approximately 1.3 million Earths could fit inside of it. No. It is 1.3 million times greater volume than Earth, so the little assist thing that DuckDuckGo gave me is poorly written here. But the telescopeguru.com does say the sun is hundreds of times larger than Earth in diameter. It's poorly written there. But yeah, has 1.3 million times greater volume than Earth. Now, remember, 1 billion kilometers, I think that was about 8 AU across. The sun is 0.00465 AU. Okay, let me just check again. Let me check again on the 1 billion kilometers to AU. And AU is the distance from the sun to the Earth. I think it should actually be the center of the sun to the center of the Earth on average, because it does change a little bit, but yeah. Okay, sorry. 6.68. There was an 8 in there. Okay, hang on. Yeah, okay. Okay. So yeah, 1,000. It's like, no, we would be talking a hell of a lot more than I mean, you know what? I'll bet if I change this. How many times larger is Jupiter? I did also think about this earlier. I just didn't actually look it up. Yeah, Jupiter has is large enough, sufficiently larger than Earth by volume to hold over 1,300 Earths. Okay, Kirk's. How did I put it? Space experienced eyes. Nope. And to help put that in context, also for Jupiter, and part of how I knew, oh yeah, it's gonna be the red spot is larger than the Earth. Okay, I think you can fit 4 Earths across it. It's like 3 or 4 Earths. Jupiter is freaking huge. Anyway, what the hell else was there? That actually might have been it. Yeah. So basically, it just ends with it's saying that yeah, the Enterprise we might be able to pull out of dry dock, out of space dock, and send it out. But yeah, and also Laurie's basically saying, acknowledging. Well, Kirk is inferring, at least I think she is also kind of acknowledging it. The reason why she has been asked, because she was asked to be the one to talk to him. Excuse me. It was because Kirk was going to be told the Enterprise is the one going out. All of its crew are coming back for it because they know the ship and they already work well together. And it's Captain Decker who will be in command, not you. So that's the whole. I think, where Kirk is like, choose your words carefully or I'll just know you're a whore. Which, I mean, I'd already figured that one out. A couple years prior, already the case. I'm so bothered by that. Anyway, yeah, so it seems like, yeah, you're not gonna be in command of it. Decker is, and it even suggests that it was Kirk who suggested Decker be the new captain of the Enterprise, and that he's got experience with it now. And also he knows all the ways it's been changed, that it's been upgraded. In theory, some of the crew would also. But yeah, it's obviously he is going to get on board, which makes sense because if nothing else, it's still I got experience. I'm gonna be there even if I'm not in command. He wants command, but yeah, it is just. I'm just having multiple thoughts in my mind. I'm trying to decide which is the best way to put it, and I think the best way is this. In a way, Kirk being made an admiral is like how. Like why that we never got a sequel to The Lord of the Rings. Tolkien did in fact start writing a sequel, but he stopped, and part of the reason why was because he recognized to write a sequel where somehow the evil returns. I think it was supposed to be titled something like The Shadow Returns, something like that. He recognized if he did that, it would invalidate the end of Return of the King, because it would mean you didn't, in fact, crush this great evil. You did not, in fact, defeat Sauron. There was something more. And that is a very legitimate concern. In a way, Kirk being main admiral is like that, where you have destroyed, I shouldn't say destroyed, damaged the ending of Star Trek. In that, well, yeah, even though it only was 3 years, but still, you kind of damaged that because you removed Kirk from that position. However, as this chapter's already pointed out, he basically was promoted to admiral for a political reason that was not his own choosing. And even he is recognizing he wants to go back. So it is like it is damaging, but I want to say that damage was intentional because it helps emphasize here how that damage was wrong and that people are wrong here. He needs to get back. So that I completely give a pass to, but it is in an interesting way, it's also demonstrating that very thing, because it's also like with the Disney Star Wars trilogy, how the only it starts and the way it that whole trilogy works is predicated on Return of the Jedi actually being a failure. That the New Republic is a failure. Like it has to be seen that way, because hey, basically we got the Empire back, and they've already built super duper Death Star. I mean, it's like, yeah. I'm just trying to think, are there other examples of that? I'm sure there are. I'm just in various media, and it's like it's kind of this. It's an issue of escalation, which it's one example of an issue of escalation. Yeah, I'll just keep talking anyway, even though this is long, because this is actually a very important topic, I feel. And it's also relevant for me with Star Trek, because I do think Enterprise, part of the reason why I hate that show as much as I do, is I think that one thing they decided to do there, I consider it an issue of escalation, that they realized they made a bad decision. It's like, okay, well, we'll do this because, oh, we need to escalate. It's like, no, you don't. The Temple Cold War. I despise that idea. I think that they had the idea of, hey, wouldn't it be neat if we did a prequel thing so we see humanity struggling, those first steps struggling into space. But then it's like, oh, wait, we need to be able to have really neat, cool stuff that matters. So let's come up with this Temple Cold War, so that way we can use super advanced technology that's beyond anything that we've seen before. And it's like, but it's dumb. It's like, because there's nothing that's shown a Temple Cold War existing before. By the nature of a Temple Cold War, well, of any kind of war through time like that, it's eternal. Okay, it is always happening, and it can never end. Okay, because it will always be able to continue itself. You'll always be able to go back a little further or forward a little further to make sure it's still happening. So it's like it's a terrible idea, absolutely terrible idea. And as I said, I think that they did that because they wanted to be able to escalate. And it's like, you don't need to. There's no need to do that. I mean, it's like to use another. Yeah, it does kind of work in a different way. After Endgame in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they should have paused, not keep trying to churn out movies. But it's also, they should have gone to more personal stories. No longer things that threaten the planet. Like, no more Avengers level stuff. At least not for a while. You can work towards building up to something else. That's fine. But go back to it. Do I want to use... I'm trying to think, is Spider-Man No Way Home a good example? In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. Because it is a story that it's contained to New York, but how it ends with he's amazing neighborhood Spider-Man. It's like, that's where you need to go back to after that. You don't need to keep escalating, or you can escalate in just personal ways. So it's also like, that would have been a good time to do Fantastic Four, to do X-Men, where it's you go back to something where it's now personal. You reset, so it's personal stakes, not grand stakes. So you make, because the funny thing about escalation is you don't need it over the entire run of something. You can reset it. Which, going back to the thing with Tolkien, he could have potentially found a way to reset it and not have the grand conflict between good and evil. But at the same time, that's what he had written. So how do you step away from that and have it be a meaningful story? Have it be a sequel? That I will grant. I mean, that I will grant. Whereas I do need to go through the similar lane. I need to read it. I have it, but it's like, and it is. I can see. How do you do a sequel to The Lord of the Rings without it continuing to be the grand good and evil? That I can understand. But it's... Yeah, escalation is... And how you either maintain it or give it up. It is the thing that I feel has, in many times, the right choice saves and ensures a franchise, and the bad choice damages and even destroys the franchise. So I'll give one example, and not to say that that my decision was good. I think it was good, but for me, going from failure, and it's like the only time I've done an actual sequel, failure to The Children of Many Gifts. Failure is a very personal story. It's about one person, and as I thought about it, what I would do for a sequel, I knew I would want the sequel to be, okay, what would the impacts of the actions of that one person on the world? How is the world now reacting? But even then, for the majority of that book, it's set in the same city, but it now involves a group of people. Okay? We're still really just following one person, but this person is interacting with this group that we're meeting and finding things out through that. And then it does end with an actual trip around the world. And I've got ideas for 2 more stories of that both will be even more so the world stage, actually moving around the world and doing things there, because that was the logical escalation there. But there's also what are the actual personal stakes involved. For Sam, the main character in Failure, and he is also in So Many Gifts, he, in the 50s, he has a fight. It is actually, and this may change because I haven't written the 2 books I want to follow. But currently, the intention for me is that the battle in the 50s that he has is the biggest battle, is the greatest fight he will ever have. Everything after that will be, as far as threat, minimal. Well, less, I shouldn't say minimal, but will be less. He is so far beyond everyone that it will be minimal to him, but it will be a lesser threat. So instead, the escalation as far as he's concerned, especially with the next one, is more so emotional. Yeah, as I said, I know I'm at this point just rambling, but it is, escalation, as I said, it is so key, and it is, they're playing with it here. The whole, he was promoted for political reasons, so he's not in the position he should be in. So it's like, they escalated by promoting him, so that he's now out of position from where he should be. It has damaged everything set up with the original series, not trilogy, the original series, that he's a great captain. They've now damaged that by removing him from being a captain. So now part of the story can be bring him back. So that's part of escalation, and it does work for how this is structured. I'm just trying to think, what would be another example that way it was done badly? All I'm doing, though, is just thinking of some series where they do escalate, and it's like, why? You made this kind of stupid. I think one that makes most sense to try to explain would actually be the John Wick series. Like, the first movie is great. Great movie. For what it... Okay. I shouldn't say great. Within the series, it is the best of them. It is a very good movie. I don't want to say great, because great I should reserve for truly significant works. I'm not sure if it is that, but it very, very good movie. None of the others come close to it. And I feel part of that is the escalations. Like, because you went from something where we're not getting all the details about how this assassin universe works, this assassin world works. And it's still, that very contained. But as you get to 2, now there's more involved. 2 leads directly into 3, which leads directly into 4. And you're trying to escalate along there, and it just is like, what the hell's going on? Why are you throwing this all in? I don't understand a lot of it, because it seems like they tried to keep escalating and just... Does that work? I'm just thinking, the Terminator and Terminator 2. I don't care about the other Terminators. In a way, yes, you do see escalation between the Terminator and Terminator 2. Not so much stakes. Yeah, not so much stakes. That's a little hard to say, though, because they had to... Terminator 2 technically is impossible. If you in the original Terminator, the war is over. There's no opportunity for a second Terminator to have been sent back for the Terminator 2. That is against the canon of the Terminator. But they did it anyway because just retcon it. Yeah. It's like, it's more or less a good faith retcon. I'm okay with it. But in some ways, it's an escalation for the action, but not an escalation for the stakes involved. But you do see the escalation for personal stuff because of how Sarah Connor loses her conscience, essentially, and is going to commit cold-blooded murder because she thinks it will avert a catastrophe as opposed to trying to find another solution. So, yeah, so it's... Does that kind of... Nah, I need to stop talking. This video is already too long. Damn, it really is too long. I was hoping to get some other stuff done tonight, and I can't because of how long this has been. I'm sorry. I just... You get me going on this stuff. And it is... I like... Escalation is a very interesting topic to me because it, as I already said, and I will repeat it, and then I will try to stop them. When working with a franchise or a series, however you want to put it, you need to really think on the right decisions for escalation. And like I was saying with Enterprise, I do believe that by trying to escalate with Temple Cold War, that harmed that series. That it would be better if you just got rid of that, because it's enough for just the trials of those first steps. That's interesting enough on its own. You don't need this other stuff. Okay, you really don't. And also then the whole Xindi stuff with the Expanse, it's like, all that is just nonsense, because it's like, okay, the Temple Cold War in theory can be like, okay, well that just never happened. Well, it's just, we were never aware of that in the other series. But then with the Expanse and the attack on Earth and all that, it's like, son of a... Now you're just for... And I think at one point it even does state that there was some Xindi in Starfleet. And it's like... And like at a time when it's like the other series were happening. So it's like... Seriously, no. Don't... You should not have done any of that. You should have... I mean, and you already had like conflicts with the Klingons. You can deal with that. There was already a war with the Romulan Star Empire. Okay, this is stated in Balance of Terror. And that it was, the Romulans and humans had never seen each other because it was before they had view screens and that form of communication. Things were just, the peace accords for it were just transmitted. It's like, that's all. It's like, you could have had that, but you didn't. You already did so much, but no, we're going to do this other stuff that's like, it doesn't fit in unless you really wedge it, and it's like, why do that? You don't need to. You didn't need to escalate there. Okay, that is enough. You know, maybe going through Star Trek was a bad idea because I love it too much and have too many opinions, along with my opinions on storytelling. Maybe I'll be able to focus more and keep the stuff short in the future. Anyway. See you next time.